Um, Welcome everybody. It's very nice seeing you and great to have you here. We are actually recording this event and plan to use that publicly. So for those of you who don't want to be seen, then you might turn off your video. So I'm Susanna Krüger. I'm the Managing Director of the Social Entrepreneurship Network in Germany. And for those of you who do not know CENT, we are the Association for Social Entrepreneurs in Germany, and we advocate for policies that create the best conditions for social entrepreneurs and business in Germany. So basically, we are the ones who work with problem solvers who are working actually on society's biggest challenge. So that's our mission. And first, a brief comment on how we got here today, because this day actually marks the end of quite a long journey. Over 2.5 years, we have received funding from Google.org, and we distributed 1 million euros of that funding to our community. And today, and as a former evaluator and someone who worked in social impact measurement, I'm very happy to, I'm thrilled to be here. We will hear the results of the final report and hear many perspectives from people that took part in these various programs. So to say that, I have been with CENT for half a year now, a bit more. So this project took place before my time, and the team that was responsible for it has also left. But it might be that Afra, Martha, or Armida are here. I don't have the overview, and also Katharina Schape, who was also in the team. And when you're here, I want to say and pose a big thank you for your work and all that you have done to that. And this thanks goes also to our partners who are here today and other involved stakeholders, especially Unity Effect, who I will hand over to in a second. Last point, to the role of inclusion, which is the topic of today. The value of diversity in our society is proven. So we know that more diverse teams achieve more, and a multitude of perspectives allows for the development of just solutions. However, this project rejected the narrative of us helping them. So we are always working on like systemic and long-term approaches, and this is supported by a narrative that highlights opportunities and potentials. So the founders who we worked with are not merely individuals to serve like a predefined system, something like that, but they are allies together with us and all the stakeholders in reshaping systems. So that's important to me to say that upfront. And while current political priorities are not not so likely to be favorable to this agenda and to us, it's even more vital that we deepen partnerships and have opportunities like that. And with these words, over to Laila Martins from our partner Unity Effect to guide us through this event.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Susanna, for that overview. And we're really excited to have all of you with us today. As was mentioned, it's a long and important journey that has brought us here to envision a more inclusive entrepreneurship sector in Germany. And in today's sessions, we have a lot of really exciting conversations. So we'll start off with a keynote. We'll then jump into the presentation of the report results. We also have some incredible voices to talk a little bit more about what it means to shape an inclusive social entrepreneurship sector in Germany. And then we'll also have space for open dialogue. So please do take note of anything that you would like to share, because we will leave space for you to raise your hands and ask your questions at the end. And that is an essential part to today's conversation. Also, as Susanna mentioned, if you were a project lead in this report previously and you are in today's call, we would also love to hear from you. So please feel invited to also share your expertise, and we will make sure to make space for that in the beginning. And we are going to go to our first speaker of the day, which I'm really excited about. So our keynote speaker will be Sidonie Fernau. She is a member of the SEND Executive Board, CEO of Pericom GmbH, and founder of a social enterprise. So would you over to Sidonie, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and also for having me today. Yeah, as you said, my name is Sidonie Fernau. I live in Hamburg, and I would like to introduce myself first before addressing some themes I think we should talk about the next hour. I am working for der Paritätische Wohlfahrtsverband, actually for the regional association in Hamburg since April 2012. And for those who don't know, der Paritätische, it's one of 6 umbrella organizations of the independent welfare sector and an umbrella organization for non-profit organizations for the social economy. That means supervised playgrounds, daycare centers, hospitals, rescue services, counseling centers for pregnant women or for drug addicts, women's shelters, assisted living for young people, or hospice for dying, etc. And what we do, we offer startup advice, business management advice, networking, further training, and political lobbying for our member organizations. And the last few years, I was able to set up the social innovation, civic engagement, and diversity division for the association. This includes, for example, entering diversity issues as a cross-section in the areas of youth welfare, elderly care, disability care, and self-help. But also for the development of projects aimed to supporting Alevi and Muslim religious communities, as well as people with their own or family history of flight and migration, to establish and expand their own non-profit organizations in order to address social challenges. And since almost 4.5 years, I have been a managing director of Pericom, you mentioned it, a subsidiary of Paritätischer. And here I advise commercial companies in the social economy and social entrepreneurs on scaling their solutions and try to build a bridge between independent welfare work and social entrepreneurship sector. Among other things, I was a member of the International Advisory Board for Social Innovation of the Federal Ministry of Education and Research during the last legislative period of the federal government. And so I think that's important to know. I can not only take a perspective of a meta actor, but also that of a founder who belongs to a marginalized group. So I'm a Muslim and I'm a Black living in Germany. My mom, who is, by the way, also here listening just to hear my English, she's from Jamaica. Yeah, and during Corona, what was a really intense period, I think, for us all, hi mom, I also took over interim management of a member organization that's called Mamalis. By the way, it's a member organization of SEND2 and a non-profit company in Hamburg that offers German language support and meeting opportunities with child supervision in a protective, we call it safer space for women. And now is the largest migrant women organization in northern Germany, with an actual annual turnover of over 3 million euros and 25 employees in full time. So yeah, and for the past 2 years, I've been delighted to help build up the ecosystem as a member of the SEND board. And I was asked in advance, so what barriers do I see and which one should we address in our conversation? And I picked actually 3 barriers for different groups. One are the meta actors. I think diversity conscious and racism critical work must be understood as part of one's own quality management. And it's not something that's nice to have. I often witness marginalized people not even daring to get a startup consultation, for example, because they were afraid of being rejected or having to explain and justify their existence. And this fear is justified. So it sounds quite strange, maybe for someone who didn't think about it before, but I saw this like so often the past few years. And I can't tell you how often I have been experienced discrimination and racism, not as paritätischer, but in my role as a representative of a migrant women organization, as a woman, as a Muslim, and as a Black person in Germany. And because I know that in established organizations, in particular, a lot can only be achieved with financial pressure, for me, it would be very much like funding institutions to make this condition for funding, so comprehensive quality in the organizations they give money to. Regarding the donors, I think we want to use the money to initiate lasting positive change. And we will only know which approach is really the best for each challenge once everyone has contributed their ideas. It is therefore also in our interest that tenders are transparent and low, what is the word low? I think it's threshold, niedrigschwellig. So to do this, donors also need to move out of their own comfort zones to where the previously underrepresented groups are. And if they don't know how to make contact, a budget must be set aside for this, because this is also part of the good quality of their work, right? Instead of holding text Teams, Google Meets, or Zoom events where a funding guideline is represented in like a one-way communication, and I attended like so much of these, I would like to see them enter into a dialogue with their funding guidelines and listen, really listen to what applicants really need in order to contribute their proposed solutions to social challenges. And third, I was asked, so which potential do I see to further shape an inclusive social society in Germany? And regarding the startups, I can actually only speak for myself. Sometimes I think it's a German term, feel like a fish in the desert. So being somehow not at the right place. I don't know if you if you can what is the word, resonate with this kind of feeling. To be honest, it's exhausting. And the question is, should it really be our job to ensure the programs that are set up or networks that are created are permeable and therefore of a certain quality? Actually, I don't know. I'm not finished thinking about that, but I do know that we must continue to get involved in order to change the status quo. And I would therefore like to take this opportunity to ask for your patience and continue commitment, even if it sometimes seems exhausting. So I am very pleased that we are not fighting alone and we've got allies, but yeah, that grievance has been identified here and that meta actors have set out to tackle it. I am therefore very much looking forward to the representation of the report and the lessons we can learn from it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Susanne, for that overview, talking about the potential that we have and the commitment of everyone that's here today and that has worked and continues to work in this sector. So without further ado, we're now going to jump over to Yannick, who is the co-founder of Unity Effect, who has worked on the report and who will share an overview of the report. So I will unpin you and pin Yannick. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And wonderful to share this space with you. And just to share a little bit as context. So Susanna already said we worked as partners alongside CENT in evaluating this program, Unity Effect. We are also a social enterprise. We are part of CENT, the network. And our founding team is 75% female from 3 continents. So the topic itself touches us as an organization as well very much from the inside. And with this, 1 second for me to pull up the slides properly. Very happy to share some insights that we had along the way working on this project. So please let me know if there's something that you can't see. So the report launch, and what I'm going to share about are those 4 points. So we took a regenerative approach to impact evaluation, and I'm going to explain very briefly what that actually means and how does this work before we then dive into the report insights, and then also connecting to what Sidonie shared, recommendations to policymakers, philanthropy, and intermediaries that we also make in the report. And as a last point, there are invitations that we would love to share for you to stay connected, to stay in touch. So, a regenerative approach to impact evaluation. How does this work? At Unity Effect, we are not only working in the field of measurement and evaluation, there's also 2 other areas: learning, experience, design, thriving teams and leaders. And at the center of what we do is the question of how we can create the conditions in teams, organizations, and networks to thrive, have agency, and lead systemic change. Lila and I, we are co-leading the area on regenerative measurement and evaluation. I was leading this project in terms of methodology, development, and implementation. And so a guiding question that we had and that we posed is, how can impact evaluation give more energy than it takes to the causes we care about, the people we work with, and ourselves? And this question has multiple layers. It's about the process of evaluation itself, but it's also, in this case, what is actually the underlying intention that we have in a report, and we are going to get there as well. The methodology that we have used is the Impact Garden. It's a framework, a theory of change that we have developed at Unity Effect, which very much puts the cyclical nature of change in the center. So working towards long-term change asks about creating the supportive framework of conditions, and it's understanding change in an iterative process. There's more to this framework, and it's all open source and online. So if this is something that speaks to you, very, very happy if you want to read more or follow up on. So now getting into the report insights, and we've already heard a little bit from Susanna and also Sidonie about the context. So just for general framing, in January 2022, CENT e.V. secures this 1.6 million from Google Org Social Innovation Fund. You might have heard the news back then. The purpose was to strengthen Germany's social entrepreneurship ecosystem and empower underserved communities as a very specific focus. So there was a dual focus: direct support for founders and engage the wider support ecosystem around it. And we already heard the term multi-actor network. So the project or the program had 3 pillars centered around the Social Innovation Fund. The heart of it, one could say, is Empower Now, which is re-granting 1 million of those 1.6 million to funding partners to develop and implement support programs. There was also work with multi-actor network, so convening the actors that are providing support for social enterprises, and also developing, setting up regional clusters. So those were the 3 main pillars of the project. When we designed the methodology, we described 3 central pathways for change. The first one is from support to empowerment. So describing how the program enabled founders from underserved communities to be empowered and successful long-term. So yes, there's provision of support, but were participants empowered and successful long-term? The other one is from awareness to commitment. And this is also something that Sidonie talked about. So it's the steps from institutions and other organizations to really anchor inclusion, anchor the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice into the internal working processes. And then lastly, from networking to alliances, this is how partnerships can be formed to advance the mission of an inclusive sector. So for example, support guidelines, policies, etc. So those were the 3 pathways that we looked at. Just some figures up front, again, to describe a bit the scope of the project. So 1.6 million, 1 million was given to funding partners, which quite often were actually consortia consisting of more than one organization. Almost 500 people were reached in support programs. 94% of supported initiatives stated that they already founded during or plan to found right after the programs, and very high trust rates as well. So this safer spaces that were mentioned. The support programs lasted 18 months on average, and in total, there were 52 workshops given during those support programs. A few more figures: more than 92,000 people were reached through social media. 3 out of 5 of these funding partners committed to continue working in that field because of the high demand and the relevance. And the program also financed almost 13 full-time equivalent positions for funding partners, which was a crucial factor for success. So investing into people that are providing these support programs. Now, the intention and evaluation of the report. So what happens quite often, this was an end of program evaluation, is that there is looking backwards and reflecting on experiences, lessons, and impact. And that is definitely crucial, and you're going to do this. But we felt in order for the program to unfold its full potential, to do justice to the work that has been done, what is actually equally interesting is to map out future pathways for underserved communities and really centered around this question, addressing challenges or seeing systemic enablers, how we describe it in the report. And all this happens within a frame, within a narrative. And in the following minutes, we will race through these different aspects of the report, which is a 60-page report, which you will have access to as well in a bit. The 3 narratives that we identified that this report falls into. One is social entrepreneurship as such, and the opportunity that social entrepreneurship has and unfolds already. The second one is shaping an inclusive society. So we talked about, Susanna mentioned the potential of inclusive teams, for example. So there is no need to prove the value of inclusion, but still there is a whole narrative around this. And lastly, political will and systemic approach. And the report contains lots of data and information. I decided to pick out 3 quotes. The first 2 might sound familiar already, to give you just a sense of this. So the first one: in all this, it's crucial to reflect critically on power dynamics. If the understanding is that we help them, then we got it wrong. In an inclusive framework, founders are not merely seen as individuals to serve a predefined systems, but as allies in reshaping systems. And I would add here, allies in also addressing societal challenges that we are facing. And lastly, which speaks to the political will and systemic approach, while additional funding would certainly be beneficial, what founders from underserved communities primarily need is access to existing support infrastructures, including funding programs, continuous support, and consultancy services. Now, report insights. There were 3 factors for success that we identified in the different support programs. One is creating safer spaces with time and presence for founders to be seen, be heard, make connections. It's also about combining intimate small group programs with open, bigger scale offers. So we found this to be quite powerful. So really like 10 to 15 person programs that are very individualized At the same time, also larger programs, which might then be combined with, for example, online modules. And the importance to think beyond time-bound programs. A program ends, the question is, what happens next? You've seen that people already could have redistributed much more money than 1 million, more than 8.5 million. And also for these smaller support programs, there were almost 3 times as many applicants as people that were selected. Those founders are tackling relevant challenges. So here, this shows the people supported in the programs. 32% have no focus specifically on discrimination. The others address the same form of discrimination they experienced, or other forms of discrimination, so highly relevant topics. But of course, not only, but nonetheless, working on relevant challenges while facing challenges. And this is something we've already heard as well. There is financial insecurity and a lack of safety nets for many founders, especially if those some migrated to Germany. There is just less of a safety net available. Fear to engage with official authorities. We heard Sidonie talk about this, and disconnected short-term support offers. And in the report, we turn these into systemic enablers. So turning around the question, these are the challenges. There is the potential that we know. So what can we do to provide the supportive conditions for founders from underserved communities? How can we jointly make the sector more inclusive? And this is where the recommendations come in. So here, this is mapping the future pathways. And we start with recommendations that the report makes for policymakers. So 3 recommendations: engage with and listen to founders from underserved communities. So this is about also acknowledging the lived experiences of the people that you are responsible for. Establish support mechanisms for founders from underserved communities. So this is a lot about truly combining different policies, for example, and understanding what the needs are of people from certain communities and how different policies can interlink and support. And implement an equitable financial strategy in policies. So to understand that financing mechanisms, again, should complement. So there is a need, for example, for flexible long-term support. And in all this, the idea is not to design policies for people, but with people from underserved communities. Recommendations for funders and philanthropy. Investing into systems change. I think we've seen the value of, in this case, having Send as a backbone organization or as a network. And there are many other communities out there. So it's investing into networks, investing into communities that address certain challenges. The second one is money to the people. And we know from studies that, for example, unrestricted funding works, and how many barriers and also legal limitations it can take away. So really this idea of investing into people with money. And lastly, we've seen a value of the regenerative approach to evaluation, so that measurement evaluation does not become a form of control, but rather a form of learning, of deepening one's impact. And lastly, recommendations for setting up inclusive funding offers. If you are an intermediary, for example, designing new programs, they don't need to have a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. These are simply good practices, which is planning for connection and emergence. So not only about content that is being given or handed over to participants, the power of community and role models. So we have seen this also in the work of the funding partners, how important building a community was and how important it was for aspiring founders to connect to role models that already have traveled a certain distance, that could share their stories and that they could relate to. And lastly, institutionalization beyond the program. So always asking the question, what happens after the program is over? Is there, for example, a collaboration possible with public institutions? Is there a link to other programs, a link to a community? So this question, what comes after? Those are the recommendations from the report. Closing with 2 invitations to stay connected. The first one is that Laila and I, we will be hosting a 5-part program, the Regenerative Signal, a journey of evaluation, recognition, and learning, which is very much diving into this idea of regenerative evaluation and applying this to your work. It's free of charge, and there's a link, so you can just sign up. It starts next week. And there is a project that we are working on with partner organizations, Imani, on basically measuring the impact of mutual relationships of innovativeness. So to unpack this just very briefly, it's to understand how do migrant entrepreneurs impact innovation ecosystems in a city, for example. How do they enrich innovation ecosystems? And the other way around, how can established innovation ecosystems support migrant founders? And we are developing an impact model for this and also learning modules and practical tools. And if you want to be connected to this project, there's also a link where you can give us your email and we will happily follow up with you. So much about the report, the key findings, the recommendations, and now it's hearing more about voices and hearing, I would say, a bit more practical, some of the insights, how has the project, the program been, and specifically also what emerged out of it and came after. So much from my side.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yannick, for sharing that overview. As Yannick mentioned, this is a long report, and that was his 5-minute overview. So we'll make sure to share that with you. And as Yannick mentioned, we now want to get practical. So we'll head over to our next speaker, who is Bericht Envisioning. She is the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Impact Hub Berlin. And she'll talk about the voices in shaping the inclusive social entrepreneurship sector in Germany. Over to you, Vera.
Thank you so much, Laila. I think Marta and Afra are also here, right? You were the project leads from Sensei. Do you also want to say hi, or should I jump right in?
You have the word.
Okay, good. All right, I'll share my screen. So we've been one of the funding partners that was privileged enough to receive funding for Empower Now. And I just want to give you a bit of an insight of what we did on the ground and also how the journey continued after the funding we've received. And then I'll also share a bit more freely without slides, maybe some insights and learnings. Please cut me off when my time is over. So what were the project components? So for us as Impact Hub Berlin, so for those who don't know us, we are a support organization for social entrepreneurship. So we provide space, co-working, and then also support programs. And we have different topics that we work on. And one of them, is diversity, equity, inclusion. And what we really wanted to do is, in the first measure, to build awareness and education around these topics. So really, provide a space for people to come in, give insights, to learn together with our community, with externals, but of course also within our team. And the second one, which was the maybe bigger measure of the funding, was to build an incubation program for Flinter founders. So for those who don't know the term, Flinter stands for female, lesbian, inter, non-binary, trans, and agender founders, who also face discrimination in their founding journey. And we really wanted to have a look at how can a program look like that supports founders with amazing ideas in the DEI space. And I'll say a bit more about that in a bit. Maybe to give you a bit of an insight, I will not focus on this topic so much because I think the incubation program is maybe a little bit more interesting in my view, although equally important, of course. Our vision was to really rethink how we can transform society, how we can transform economic and political equity. These are also words that you've already mentioned, Yannick. So we really wanted to work with founders and activists that really bring like a systems change. There are a lot of people doing really amazing work, and not a lot of programs are very accessible to them. So we really wanted to see like what can we build to make that more accessible. So part of the funding was that we really wanted to give membership stipends. We have a space that costs money. This is also how we survive. But I think for us, it's also very important that these spaces are not exclusively accessible if you can afford them. So this was also really amazing that the Empower Now funding allowed like a variety of funding opportunities. We've done a lot of events and workshops. Also, our team has participated in a lot of empowerment awareness trainings. And just to give you a bit of an insight, we partnered with some organizations in our space to create a really beautiful event for World Refugee Day. We've also had a trans activist come in and give us a workshop on queer inclusion at the workspace, so a bit more like practical tips. We've also had a film screening by a movie that one of our members did, and a discussion on gender diversity. So just to give you like a bit of snippets of what topics were that we hosted and addressed. Yeah, and now coming to the accelerator, you're seeing here one of our cohorts. Maybe to start off, I am the lead of this topic and I wrote the funding application. For me, it was extremely important to build this program not by myself. I mean, I do bring perspective as a queer and chronically ill person, but there's also a lot of things that I don't know or I haven't experienced. So for me, it was really important to build an advisory board that was designing this program together with me. Those were 6 people. Batsi, Henriette, Fox, KW, Amrei, and Hedda. They brought in very different lived experiences, very different perspectives. And I think one very important point here to mention is also that they were all paid for their work. I think this was also a really good part of the funding, that we could just distribute the funding that we received, because a lot of the work in this space is being unpaid. Yeah, why did we want the board? As I said, to have different perspectives also, to make the incubator as accessible, inclusive, and equitable as possible. A lot of the advisory board has also founded before, so this was really important for us to get their experiences. Yeah, and what does the program actually look like? So we designed a 6-month incubation program to, on the one hand, support them with partnership readiness, how we call it. So basically building their business, learning how to build partnerships, how to survive long term. But then one really important aspect for us was to build a safer space, and we partnered with the organization TBD, who supported us in also bringing the topics of well-being, resilience into that program. Maybe I'll skip that a bit for a moment. But yeah, the partnership with TBD was important for us because we had different experts coming in and talking to the participants about different topics. We also had a psychotherapist with us, which I think was really beautiful because we could really feel it was very emotional, also the work we did in between. There were also topics where we thought we just need an expert, and I think this was also special that we could get a therapist into the program to support us along the way. I think one thing I would also really love to mention is that I think it's really important to not only build a code of conduct, which I think most of you have heard about, so a common agreement of how we want to manage the space together, but also that we, with our advisory board member, Fox, created an accountability process. So this basically means what happens if a discrimination takes place. And I also want to mention, I think it's almost impossible to build a space when no discrimination happens. And I think also to have a process in place if something happens, be it within the team, be it within the accelerator, be it in front of investors, talking to outside partners. There was like a 3-step process that they could follow and get support. We also had an awareness person that we paid to be there from the outside in case something happened with me or my team. So I think this is also really important to track. Yeah, maybe to give you a bit of a small insight who was part of the program. Mechthild built Inclusive Achtsamkeit. She's based in Cologne, does amazing work, is building a mindfulness practice that is accessible for people with disability, also building a platform, offers courses, does a lot of awareness building. So definitely check her out. Roots Berlin is an amazing organization based here in Berlin that is a nonprofit that brings people of color together through creativity, movement, sharing knowledge. They have really beautiful events in Berlin. Also definitely an organization to check out. Hilda's House is also a nonprofit that aims to create safer spaces for fintech and vulnerable and marginalized positions. So they also do a lot of community building and also have a topic on self-empowerment through economic tools. Just one of many really great organizations. You can check them out on our website. But yeah, a bit of our impact in a nutshell. Yeah, as I said, we've tried to pay everyone we've worked with. We received 84 applications, which was quite a lot for the first round. So also we see a big need there. We also had a master thesis on our program, and they interviewed our participants. So you can also find that online if you want to learn a bit more. And then I think I'm running out of time, but I just want to mention, I think generally this funding was really beautiful for us. Maybe I'll stop the screen share. Because it kind of let us build up this program and lay a groundstone so we could further finance it. We were lucky enough to continue this program with a corporate partner after for another year. So we could do a second cohort. We integrated a bit more like other components, such an ideathon to really bring people together. And also, yeah, create these ideas. We have, I think, a participant here will speak after me. So never mind me, be as honest as you would like to be. Yes, and at the moment, this program has ended and we are struggling to refinance it also. I think everyone knows that it's really difficult to access fundings at the moment. So this program is a little bit on hold, but yeah, I just maybe also want to jump on one thing that you said, Sidonie, and then I'll stop. I think what we could experience is that a lot of founders came into the program really traumatized. They're extremely smart business models, extremely smart people, amazing businesses. There's really a need, and they've been to coaches or like offers, and coaches just told them, I don't understand why you're doing this. Like, I don't think we need this. And if you hear this over and over and over again, it's so difficult to keep up the like confidence and stamina. So I think also this part of providing a space to talk about this and rebuild your trust and rebuild your resilience was really important. And I think also taking time for us as the program hosts to deal with this, yeah, was also really crucial. And if you have more questions, I'm happy to chat any other time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the overview, Vera. And please, everyone, get your questions ready because we will have an open floor in a minute. But before we do, we have two other speakers for you. And the next one will be Angelica Choose. Please correct my if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. She's a program participant of Empower Now. And we'll also have we'll bring Sidonie back as well as a jury. But we'll ask you both to keep in mind for the time and shorten it a bit. So just to make sure that we get everybody out the door by 2. So Angelica, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, it's Angelika Teves, but it's fine. I hear that pronunciation a lot. So yeah, thanks for having me here today. Just invited me to talk about my experience with Empower Now last year. I also work with Send in strategic philanthropy, and I think lots of things that you said also apply to my current working field. But today, yeah, I'm just super happy to talk about a 2-day ideathon that I was able to participate. So first of all, it was the first time that I would participate in such an event, and I didn't reflect on it until Jess invited me to talk about it today, because I think I never did it before because I never felt invited when I would see other invitations. And I think Impact Hub, or at least I saw it in the newsletter of Impact Hub, did really well in making clear on who they wanted to be there. So as a woman with a migration background from a working class, with a lot of ideas that I've had, I never saw a different sphere where I could actually ping pong these kind of ideas. So it was, yeah, my friend and I got really excited when we read about it, because at the same time we were, well, rather thinking about a problem than a solution, because we were dealing or thinking about online harassment a lot, because so both of us were female, we're 32 years old, and we realized that it became super normal for the people or our social circles around us to be harassed, like either while online dating, getting inappropriate messages, or at work, or going as far as stalking. And we also realized, okay, there's not really a solution for the person that's being molested in that very moment. And so that was the stage when we found out about the ideathon that would go for 2 days. And it was a really interesting experience because, for one, we were able to ping pong ideas with other participants that would also have some sort of similar or diverse backgrounds. So we'd realized that the perspective that they would bring in, or let's put it differently, it was easier to talk people that would have experienced kind of maybe also different problems, but similar problems before, because I realized they take it serious. Because if I talk to the problem about other people, they just don't see the necessity for a solution. And I think it really, yeah, Vera, what you said is that when founders come to coaches and they say, okay, there's not really a solution needed, it's really frustrating, because it also happens in a daily life when you talk to other people and they just walked a different path from yours, and they're just like, well, no, that never happened to me, so it's not needed. And so that was really interesting. It was the same with the coaches. I think all the coaches and the entrepreneurs that were giving advice during those 2 days had their own story that they could bring to it, and they would open up in the coaching sessions that they've had similar experiences. So it was really honest conversations, validating ideas and validating experiences. And it was just really creating a safer space to talk about it. So in general, I'd say it was really encouraging to actually engaging with personalities that already walk that walk. It was really validating to talk to people who also tell you that there's a necessity, that we need to solve this problem. It's just like sometimes you think it's just in your head, but then actually when you just get a mirror that people are confirming that they see the same problems, it's really a different motivation to continue with ideas. And yeah, I think all in all, it created a safe space to just ping pong ideas and to get further. And actually, my friend and I, the original idea was, can we give something to a person that's being molested? So we wanted to create a platform. So if being molested, you can have a link that you can just send to the harasser without having to deal with any further conversation. That was like the original idea, not really thought through. It was just super vague. But during the process, we found someone who was actually coached for toxic masculinity, who would have the other perspective. So we could like brainstorm ideas on how to communicate to someone who's harassing that they're doing it without doing it violently. So how can we actually engage with someone who's harassing without me as a person who's being molested, having to do the emotional labor, but the other person knows that something went wrong. So it was interesting feedback, interesting people, lots of new ideas. Also understanding that the problem is way more complex than I thought it was in the beginning, but that was also really helpful. But yeah, I think all in all, it was a really interesting experience.
Thank you so much for sharing, Angelica, and especially with these themes that are very, very complex and very difficult, as Vera was saying, to handle in the real world, and then bring it into an entrepreneurship perspective. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we would like to bring Sydney back once more to ask you about your experience as a jury. Really, what impressed you and what did you learn in that time?
So I think it's 2.5 years ago, so it just faded a bit, but yeah, I will see if I bring some points together. I'm not making myself popular when I say this, but I think it's important to take a critical look at what we are doing. So this doesn't apply to all applications, but what I find quite interesting, let me put it like this, is first, it is often the same large organizations that apply for tenders, even if they have had a little previous contact with the advertised topic, because it's quite simple. They know how to submit applications. And in German, we say they try to cover their schon da Kosten. So I just wanted to let you know, we see what you're doing. Maybe someone can translate this term into English. The second thing is you can tell how experienced a company is in submitting applications, and this doesn't even necessarily indicate how effective their project is. And the third one is that different companies, which otherwise rarely come together when the larger corporation partner sees a financial advantage for itself as an organization. I think this is important to know for other programs. And I can say this because I'm coming from an umbrella organization, so it's okay for me saying this. Yeah, what did I learn from the time in the jury? I think the perspective of underserved founders should be systematically included more when we build the ecosystem for social entrepreneurs. So even if I feel like a fish in the desert, I'm in exactly the right place at Paritätischer. This is something I learned and what was really important for myself. And at this time, actually, I decided to contribute my perspective to the Social Entrepreneurship Network, SEND, what I later on did as a member of the federal board. And I hope that more meta-organizations get the privilege, because actually this is exactly what it is, that marginalized people want to contribute their experience on a voluntary basis, and despite the additional effort this means for them. I think, yeah, these are some points.
Perfect. Thank you. And we have some alternative sayings in the chat as well. So interesting to see that from people. And now we really want to make sure that we are on point with letting everybody out at 2. So we'll have closing. But we will stay a couple of minutes to answer any questions. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure to get to those. But before we do, we wanted to just hear from Susanna again, if there's any closing invitations while everybody's dropping their questions into the chat, and any closing words from yourself as well.
Yes, there is. Thanks a lot. I have a slight problem here with my... here we go. Wonderful. Sidonie, I thank you so much that you're on our board, because your voice is very, very important. And I just learn like more and more, the more months I'm with the organization, the more I value what you're bringing in. I just want to say that. I really learned something today again and again and again. Yeah. So a huge thank you from my side and to everyone who was involved here or was involved today, and everyone who was involved in the project. I saw Afra. Hello. The report will be uploaded on our website immediately after the call, and we will also send the link to all participants, and we'd absolutely love to hear what you think. Please share your thoughts on social media or contact us directly. There are many people from SEND in this call, so you can just give us a mail or a call. And then 2 things I really want to invite you to. First, sign up to our newsletter. You can do that on the website, on our current political work and what else is happening in the sector. And more importantly, we would like to grow SEND into an even stronger voice together, and we need these multitude of perspectives. And that's why, if you're not a member, please become one, and join and strengthen the community. So this is important to us because we are also on a changing threshold and growing trajectory, and we really want to have with everything that we have heard from the report. Thank you. There's much potential out there, but I'm very thankful to all of you. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Susanna, for all of those. You can see in the chat the invitation links. And now we hand it over to you. We still have a couple of minutes. We do know that if you do need to jump out at 2, please feel welcome to. But if you want to stay a little bit longer and ask any questions, the speakers are here for you. So we have kind of 2-3 minutes. Does anyone have a question?
Not a question, but I wanted to thank everyone who was involved in this great program, great projects. And I think for me also the main learning throughout the journey was to really educate myself, speak a lot to people from underserved people, especially a big thank you to our jury members of Empower Now, because we made a plan. Of course, we asked other organizations how we should or could do it, but then we checked in with our jury and we changed a lot again, because we thought that we didn't do well on many points, but got so much great feedback from the jury member to make it even more inclusive, and especially to reflect ourselves a lot. And I think that is really something that we need today more than probably 2 years ago. So yeah, don't give up. And yeah, thanks a lot to everyone involved.
Wonderful.
I want to, if I may, second everything that Afra said. It was, although we were presented with many challenges along the way, it was an extremely rewarding experience and an extremely rewarding project with a huge learning curve, and all the learnings I carry with me in my day-to-day and in my thinking about the whole world of funding and projects and community, etc. And I think the most, or for me, the most beautiful experience was seeing all the vulnerable spaces that were created and the huge impact the project had on a number of people, in contrast to impacting a mass of people, but then having very little impact. So I think this is also, of course, due to the inspiring method that Yannick and Unity Effect chose. And I want to thank you guys again for an amazing collaboration.
Thank you so much. That's so wonderful to hear. And as you can see, you can leave this space, but the space won't leave you. So it's great to have you all back. So we're at the 2-minute mark time now. So we will close, but what we will do is to make sure that we can support all of you is if you have any questions, we're going to send out the follow-up together with the report, with more information, with all of the links that were shared in the chat. So please feel free to reply, because this is just the beginning. The report is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new one on how we will move forward with all of these recommendations in place. So thank you so much to all of our speakers that joined, everybody that has worked on this project over the last 2.5 years. And I'm super excited that everybody's now going to have access to the report so we can see what we can now do going forward. So thank you everyone so much for joining. If you have any questions, please do reach out.